Hello, everyone. This week, next couple of weeks, we're going to focus on CSS and also discuss the use of table elements. CSS is essentially what gives the website structure, what makes it look nice, what gives it color, what gives it structure, what changes font size, those kinds of things. And you can see here, I already went ahead and did some experimentation with my website to see what different elements would look like, attributes as I modified the CSS. I wanted to experiment a little bit, so I worked a little ahead putting some of this together, but you'll see quite a bit of content is actually different, and I tried to move around some elements to make them look a little nicer on our website, and that's what you're going to be doing today as well. So CSS, let's pull up the style sheet here. What you're going to need to do in order to add CSS to your website is to create a CSS file. Now you'll recall, hopefully, that when we started this website a few weeks back, we went ahead and added a CSS folder, and that folder can hold our CSS style sheet. So if you have that folder, you already have a place in which to save your CSS. If not, you might want to go ahead and create that folder. And what you will do is save as, remove that txt extension again, just like we do with the HTML. Give it a name, give it the .css suffix, and hit save. And then you've got your style sheet, and you'll see here it saves as a cascading style sheet, and it has that different icon here. And then you'll have space where you can add your CSS. I'll delete that because I already have mine right here. Now, in order to actually get the content here on your CSS file implemented onto your HTML files, you need to reference the style sheet you want to use. So recall here that the name of the style sheet is stylesheet.css. We'll reference that by using a link ref here, href here, and that's in the header because we want that to apply before we get to the website itself, because we want any reference to content in the CSS file to be applied as soon as it's reached here. So we specify the CSS we want to use before we get to the actual body of the website. Now we use this file directory name here because, again, this is where our website is located, our web page or library website page. And the CSS file is located within our CSS folder. So we're telling it here, go to the CSS folder, then look for stylesheet.css. I'll go ahead and save as well. And then we're telling it this is what we want to use as the style sheet for our site. So please refer to stylesheet.css, and it will tell us how we want our website elements arranged. Now, there's two ways in which you can reference how you want to style something using CSS, I suppose is how you could put it. So you can name each element in your CSS document, like I do here with body. And we have our body element here. And what that will do is each time you use this element, it will go over here. It'll say, okay, well, body element is defined here, and this is what Brady wants for that any content in that body element. He wants Times New Roman. He wants it to be black. That's what this 00000 means. He wants it to be 14-point font size. He wants the background to be this grayish color. Or you can give CSS names. That would be what you would want to do if you have a lot of pages, if you have a lot of different ways, styles you want to use for different fonts, for different sections, for different background colors. You want to give everything a name. That's what will work a lot better than just using each element like this. And you can use this at this element called a divider, division, to just be able to apply a class, a name, without really affecting the code at all. So you'll notice here that I put all this content, which is the main page of our website here, main name of our website, and this row of links within a div with the name of header. So you refer to it using this nomenclature here, the div, and then class equals in quotation marks header. That's how you refer to it in the HTML. In the CSS, you refer to it using a period or dot header, and then you can enter what you want for your CSS between these brackets. And so talks briefly about what each of these means as far as on our website. So we're using the header here for this content. I tell it the margin left auto, margin right auto. You need to set, if you want to center content on your site, so this is centered, this is centered, this is centered. All you have to do is set the margins on either side of this content to auto, and that'll tell it basically I want the content centered. Without that, see, this content down here does not have any margins specified, so it just pushes it as far left as possible. But if you just set the margins on the left and right to auto, then it will center your content for you. You can also align text to center. This has the same effect as long as the content itself is text. So it would center this if you do text align equals center. It wouldn't do it for this because this is a text. So you still need to apply the margins for this if you want it to be centered on your screen. It also applies a font size of 20 pixels or 20-point font. Notice that we do have attributes here for the body, and this div is within the body. So what happens when you have two sets of instructions here? You have the set of instructions for the body that says 14-point font, but you also have the set of instructions for header here that says 20-point font. Whatever is closest, I guess, whatever is in wrapping the content most closely is what is followed. So any content in this header div is going to follow this set of instructions rather than the body set of instructions that say 14-point font. So anything in this div here is going to be 20-point font, unless it's wrapped in an even closer wrapping, which this content right here is, because it's an H1 header, it's a level 1 header, and I have instructions for a level 1 header. So for this content here, it's actually going to follow this set of instructions, which is I want the font size to be 250% of what you have here, one level up, which is 20-point font. So 250 or 2.5 times 20 is 50-point font. And again, I want the text align to be center, but that doesn't conflict with any of the other code here. So that gives us this large font here, and then this smaller 20-point font here, and it's all centered. Now I also use a table element. You can think of a table. You can think of all content on a website as being an imaginary table. And if you don't want to use the nomenclature table ever on your site, then it just remains invisible and it doesn't necessarily have to impact anything. But if you want to call out a table and say, I want to use this as a table, you can imagine it as just, there's this imaginary spreadsheet and you can just call on it and use it to reference things and to place content on your site. So one reason you might use a table for certain content is because you want to be able to apply CSS specifically to content in order to help arrange that content. And so what I have here actually is a very simple table. It's got one row and four. So that's what TR table row, TD table data. And so each of these is like adding a cell. So it's like basically the website knows I need to create 4 cells in a single row. Now you can change that pretty easily. If you wanted to have 2 rows, you could end one row and then start a new row, and now you have 2 rows. Now it should have this arrangement if you update the site. Now I tried that and I don't really like that arrangement because you can see that pushes all the other content farther down, makes it harder to see. So I decided against that, but just as easy as anything else, you can change how many rows you want. You can create a different row for each item, and then you just have a big stack of 4 photos going down the center of the screen. But again, that doesn't look necessarily very appealing. So essentially all I said is I want you to put these 4 images, group them together, because I want to do stuff with them and I want them to all move and interchange together, whatever I tell it to do with the CSS. So that was how I grouped them. Then with the CSS, I gave it the attribute or the name center. So now we're going to look for center here. And I just wanted it to be that auto, so it would be centered. So then everything within this table, which are these 4 elements here, gets centered. Now I also gave it this attribute of line height, which doesn't really apply because we're using images, but you know, if you had text, it could theoretically set the max height for characters within a line of text. Now, when you're looking to add background colors or any colors through CSS, you may wonder where I'm getting these codes, and it's pretty simple, actually. You just need to go to, I mean, there's multiple ways to do it, but the easiest way is to just search up a color wheel, and you can just move to whatever color you would want your site to be and copy the hexadecimal code and insert that into the document. So if I wanted to make my website look really ugly, I could copy this disgusting green color, save it in my CSS, update the site, and then I have that nasty green color as my new background color. And just to simply can enter back my F2, 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 and get that much more plain and inviting gray color back. Same thing with the font color. It's very easy to interchange and to add different color to your site. My biggest challenge is I'm not a graphic design person. I'm not an artist, so I tend to go for very boring arrangements of font and text. Font, you know, Times New Roman, gray, center everything and make it just look as boring and plain as possible while still looking nice. But for those of you who are graphic designers, CSS makes it very easy to change a lot of elements on your site to make it look pretty, to add color and that kind of thing. Now, lastly, some things I wanted to add to my site. were at the bottom, I wanted to change my bullet points so they're open circles and they're aligned right next to the content here. And I wanted to add a copyright signal and symbol in my name. So for one of these, the copyright symbol doesn't actually require CSS. It just requires a special character. So you remember with the non-breaking space character here, that creates a space just by adding that little line code. Here's for copyright. I would encourage you all to add that to your website. And you just enter that code that produces HTML knows that means produce a copyright symbol for me. And then you can add your name and date. Now for the bulleted list, that does use CSS. Refer to the style sheet. I didn't give this unordered list a name, so it's just looking for the default unordered list. If I gave it a name, it could refer to the name and then it would go that content. But right now it's just referring to any whatever I put for the default unordered list style. So we had this list already. We're just changing some style elements. We're changing the style type to a circle, and we're changing the position to inside. What that means is outside, you would have the bullet points aligned left and there would be space, and then the day and the times. When you say inside, it's really flush right next to the content, which I think looks a little bit better. It also has this kind of indentation now, which I kind of like for my site. But you can, CSS, once you've got down, if you just have your textbook or the website that has a list of CSS codes, there's such a variety of different ways you can just tweak your site and mess around. You could spend hours just experimenting with different colors and arrangements. And really that's what it comes down to with the CSS. It's more about that graphic design element that I'm pretty terrible at, but some of you may really enjoy, and using that to make your site look really beautiful. And the beauty of it is you can do it all in this single document. And then regardless of what web page you're on, all you have to do is call up one of these codes and it will change the style on your site. So you can call up the body on this page and it'll refer to this, and it'll do the same thing as long as you have this reference to tell it to look for that. It'll do the same thing on any of your other 5 pages. So you can have a consistent style for your body text, for your about library page, your library resources, contact us, about the developer. If you have this and you have a body tag, you can have that consistent style without having to repeat the same code over and over again on every web page. And of course, that's really helpful when you get to the point where you'd have hundreds of web pages if you want to have a consistent style. And all you have to do is have that, and then have your style sheet and have your body tag. So that's what we're going to focus on this week. I'm going to give you a couple weeks to add some kind of table to organize content on your site and to incorporate CSS and make your site look really pretty. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and contact me. As always, we'll be moving on to some more dynamic elements, including a little bit of Java, just a little touch of Java to see what that's like, JavaScript, in a couple of weeks. But you'll have a couple here to just, like I said, work with CSS, see what all CSS is capable of, and do some graphic design things to make your site look nice. All right, I'll see you in our next video. Have fun.